This is News at Prime. Let's bring you this now. Mozambique's opposition leader, Venâncio Mondlane, has called for fresh protests after claiming to have been excluded from talks with other political parties. He returned from self-imposed exile on Thursday, maintaining that he won October's election. Center for Democracy and Human Rights Director, Professor Adriano Nuvunga, joins us now from Maputo in Mozambique, the capital. Thank you very much for your time, sir, this evening. Let's start with that call for fresh protests from Venâncio Mondlane. Given the number of deaths that have been reported in the last while, is that a responsible thing to do, to call for fresh protests?
Well, good evening. Politicians, they use pressure and civilians and populations, they become the victims. And you have rightly indicated that hundreds of lives have been lost, infrastructure destroyed, properties destroyed, the economy paralyzed. As politicians, they fail to reach an agreement. That's what we see playing out here.
Yeah.
Venâncio Mondlane feels is being excluded, is being denied the stage where he should be, hence him mobilizing, because he can't do that mobilization. As you see, the day he arrived, thousands were there to welcome him despite the violence, despite the rain. So he feels that he has something in his hands to use to put pressure on the system to open and to allow him to have a substantial participation in the democratic infrastructure of our country.
Yeah. I'm just wondering how effective a weapon it is going to be going forward, given that the casualties, not only those of human lives, but the economy. When people start really feeling this, or is it your view that the community, the larger community of Mozambique is so resolute in support of Venâncio Mondlane that they don't mind putting their lives on the line to achieve this goal of installing him as president? Right now, he is a self-declared president of the people. That's the understanding of what they are calling him. But for how much longer?
Well, what people seem to be saying is that they have been suffering for the past 50 years. So they have been dying slowly in this half a century of Frelimo bad governance. So they seem to be saying that it is the same, more or less. With Frelimo, they have been dying for the past half a century, with all the grand corruption, with all nepotism, with all really abuse of Mozambique resources without any sort of benefit for the people. If you look at the statistics, with all the potential that Mozambique has, but what you see is Mozambique is 5th in the world as one of the most impoverished countries in the world. So what people are saying is, with Frelimo in power, they have been dying slowly. They have been suffering, subjected to all those kinds of abuse. So they seem to be saying perhaps if they push a bit further, there can be opening, there can be space for a more responsible governance. That seems to be the message I'm getting wherever I go.
Okay, so let's look ahead then. There's a call for fresh protests by Venâncio Mondlane, who feels excluded. Wednesday is D-Day. That's when the president elect will be inaugurated. How do you see things playing out on Wednesday? Daniel Chapo might well be president on that day.
This is unprecedented in our country, my friend. It's unprecedented. We have seen in 1999, there was a fraudulent election, and there's been protests. Hundreds died. But at some point, it ended. 2014, the same. At some point, it ended. So this is a bit of a deja vu, but it is different in that, number one, it is the first time that the political stalemate it goes to the level of threatening the inauguration itself. That's unprecedented. Number two, it's unprecedented also in the fact that it is urban-based, people-centered protests. That is novel in our country. So with this, it appears that, and in fact, from my window here, you see that streets now are being blocked from wherever we get in touch. We hear that the no movement is no more circulating as people that have been putting barricades in the streets. So it seems that as of this evening, Maputo will be paralyzed, and with movement in and outside of the country blocked. Mm-hmm. So we know that Frelimo will go ahead with the inauguration. That for sure, we know. It is the state, and the state has that responsibility to push. But it's an inauguration that goes against the will of the people. Yeah. It's an inauguration that seems to be exacerbating the already polarized society, the already tensions and conflicts and violence. So this is an uncharted waters. We've never been here, but for what we see, clearly it is not the place where you want to be, because it is not a pleasant event. It is not something that people are celebrating throughout the continent. People are celebrating the inaugurations of their president. But it is the first time that I see a situation where people, they are boycotting the inauguration of their president. So there is a widespread social boycotting of this event, which is it's perhaps a message that should be listened.
So on that point, then, it's where we're going to end this conversation, but not without this question. If you say that people of Mozambique are going to boycott, or seemingly are showing signs that they're going to boycott this inauguration, how do you see regional leaders acting on the day, either in attendance, if they do attend, in their numbers? Will they be going against the will of the people of Mozambique? But in the same breath, if a good majority of them do not attend, I'm talking about Mozambique's neighbors, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Botswana, you name them, if they don't attend in their large numbers, will that be a signal to Daniel Chapo that maybe, my friend, this is not the inauguration you want?
My friend, SADC was in Mozambique observing the election. President Karume, the former leader of Zanzibar, was here in the name of SADC observing this election. And he has a report. The report clearly indicates that this was a fraudulent election. So I wonder how regional leaders can attend an inauguration of an election that the report commissioned by them clearly shows that this was a fraudulent election. This one is one point. Second, we have seen, of course, a number of fraudulent elections in Zimbabwe, in Angola, and other parts in the region. being attended by the regional leadership. But there, you can accept that because you don't see, though there is an outcry for the fraud, but you don't see what we see here, which is a widespread seismic movement from left to right, from all corners of the country, saying no to this inauguration. Of course, as a state, we need leaders. And it's important that Chapu is inaugurated also to end Mozambique's bad leadership of President Nyusi. That's important that that inauguration takes place. But for the sake of ending President Nyusi's, my friend, terrible leadership that has destroyed the country. So there are a number of moving parts, not only one, two. So as an organization, as civil society, it's important that regional leaders come, that SADC attends the meeting. But that should be a beginning of an inclusive dialogue aimed at addressing the fundamental governance failures, including the quality of elections in Mozambique, that this will not be the same again.
Professor Adriano Nuvunga, thank you very much for your time. The director at the Center for Democracy and Human Rights.